I used to think silence was peace, that the absence of shouting meant a house was calm, that a child sitting quietly on the couch, hands folded, meant he was content, that a wife who moved softly, spoke softly, and smiled in public was the kind of mother any man would be lucky to have. But silence has a way of hiding things, dark things. It conceals bruises that aren't on the skin. It smothers cries that aren't made with sound. It numbs you, makes you believe everything's fine, until one day you blink and you realize you've been living with your eyes closed. That realization hit me on a Monday. Strange how pain always chooses the ordinary days. It wasn't his birthday or Christmas, just a cold, gray Monday. The kind where the sky stays the same color all day, and the wind feels personal. My son, Daniel, had come home from school and walked past me like I was furniture. No smile, no "Hey, Dad." Just this dull, robotic march toward his room, as if he was trying not to breathe too loud. I called after him. He paused, turned, and smiled. But it wasn't a real smile. It was one of those forced ones that children use when they're afraid to make things worse. That's when I felt it. That punch in the chest. That invisible red flag flapping behind his eyes. I didn't say anything. I let him go to his room. Maybe that was the first mistake. Or maybe the first mistake was months ago, when I started to ignore the small things, like the way he flinched when she called his name, or how he always finished his food too fast when she was around, like he was afraid of being scolded for wasting time, or how he stopped asking to help her in the kitchen, and how she never noticed. Looking back now, it's all there. Like dust on a photograph you never took the time to clean. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But before I go too far, let me tell you who I was before all this. My name's Jonathan. I'm 38, born and raised in Ohio. I work in logistics for a regional trucking company. I'm the kind of guy who doesn't raise his voice unless someone cuts me off on the interstate. The kind who still brings his wife flowers on random Thursdays, just because. And for the last 10 years, I believed I had the perfect little family, wife, son, quiet neighborhood, a dog that barked too much, and my wife Laura. She was everything I thought a good mother should be. Organized, present, involved in PTA meetings, always posting smiling pictures with Daniel on Facebook. The world loved her. And I did too. But I was wrong. God, I was so wrong that the change in Daniel didn't happen overnight. It was slow. So slow that I blamed everything but the truth. Growth. Spurts, puberty, maybe bullying at school. I even wondered if he was sick, some kind of vitamin deficiency. Anything but the woman I shared a bed with every night. I told myself she was tired. That motherhood is hard. That I shouldn't jump to conclusions. And yet, that Monday, something cracked. Something inside me woke up. That evening, I stood outside Daniel's bedroom door. I listened, not because I meant to spy, just ... I don't know, instinct maybe. The house was too quiet again. Not a good quiet. The kind that made your skin crawl, like the moment before a tornado siren blares. I heard a sniffle, not crying, not sobbing. Just one soft sniff, like a kid trying hard not to be heard. I opened the door slowly. He was lying on his side, back to me, holding one of those cheap stuffed dinosaurs we bought at a gas station years ago. It was falling apart at the seams, but he clung to it like a lifeline. "Hey, buddy," I said, keeping my voice light. He turned. His eyes were red, but he smiled, again. That same fake smile. That's when I noticed the lights were off, and he hadn't turned on the heater. It was freezing in his room. "Why is it so cold in here?" I asked gently, trying to keep my tone casual. He shrugged. "I like it like this," but he didn't. Daniel hated the cold. He was always the kid wrapped in 3 blankets by November. I looked at him. Really looked. Pale cheeks, bitten nails, the way his eyes darted to the hallway. Like he was afraid someone might hear us. I didn't press. I just sat beside him and stayed. Sometimes, silence is the only way to show someone they're safe. But in that silence, I made a promise to myself. I would pay attention, and the next day, I started watching, not in a paranoid way, not like a man hunting ghosts, but with the eyes of a father whose gut had finally started screaming, and it didn't take long before I saw the first shadow move. It started with breakfast. Tuesday morning. Eggs, toast, and silence. Lavra moved around the kitchen like a machine, efficient, polished, detached. She didn't speak to Daniel, didn't look at him, didn't ask if he wanted juice or more butter on his toast. She just placed the plate down in front of him with this distant grace, like she was serving a stranger. Daniel whispered, "Thank you." She didn't answer, didn't nod, just turned back to the stove and started wiping something that didn't need wiping. It was the kind of silence that screamed. I watched, pretending to scroll through my phone, but my eyes stayed on them. Daniel ate fast, eyes on his plate, shoulders stiff. He finished and quietly excused himself, barely above a whisper. When he left the room, I waited. Then I asked her, "Everything okay?" She looked at me surprised. "What do you mean?" "With Daniel, you've been distant." She smiled. Not a warm smile, not a real one. The kind of smile that slides over your face like a mask. "He's fine. Just moody. It's normal. He's growing." That was her explanation. And part of me wanted to accept it. Part of me almost believed her, because it's easier that way. Easier to believe in excuses than to confront what they're hiding. But now I was looking too closely. And once you start doing that, you start noticing the small, damning details. Like how she never touched him anymore. She used to be affectionate, hugs, kisses, running her fingers through his hair when he sat on the couch. But now, nothing. No warmth, no physical connection. Not even the casual contact of a mother adjusting a collar or brushing crumbs from his face, like he disgusted her. That night, after Daniel went to bed, I found myself standing in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her. She was brushing her hair, humming some song from the radio, looking as calm as ever. And I felt like I was staring at a stranger wearing my wife's skin. I said, "He's scared of you." She paused mid-brush. "What?" "Daniel, he's scared of you. I see it." She didn't turn around, just stared into the mirror. "You're imagining things." "No, I'm not." A beat of silence. Then she said something that made the hair on my arm stand up. "He's not like other boys. He's too sensitive." Her voice was soft, flat, as if she were discussing a minor inconvenience. I didn't answer. I just stood there, pulse rising. My mind scrambled to understand what she meant, but she didn't explain. She just put down the brush and climbed into bed like nothing had happened. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece things together. The more I thought about it, the more moments came rushing back. Times I had dismissed as nothing, little arguments, subtle tone shifts, unexplained punishments, and something else started nagging at me. A memory. Something Daniel had said a few weeks earlier that I had laughed off at the time. We were driving back from soccer practice, and he looked out the window and said, "Do you think some moms don't like being moms?" I asked why he'd say that. He just shrugged, just wondering. At the time, I thought he was being philosophical. Kids ask weird questions. But now it felt like a cry for help I hadn't heard. I began to watch her even more closely. Every word, every silence, every gesture around him. And slowly, it all began to take shape. The constant coldness. The way she never included him in weekend plans. How she praised other people's kids, but never once said, "I'm proud of you," to her own son. How she corrected him in front of others with a sharpness that was never meant to teach, only to shame. But the worst moments were the quiet ones, when he'd ask a question, and she'd pretend she hadn't heard, when he'd try to show her something he made at school, and she'd glance at it for 1 second before nodding without a word. Cruelty doesn't always wear a raised hand. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it just walks away while you're speaking. Still, I didn't confront her. Not directly. Not yet, because I didn't just want to know what was happening. I wanted to understand why. And to do that, I had to watch. Quietly, what I found next would change everything. The next few days felt like I was living in someone else's house, one where I knew every room but didn't recognize the people inside. I started coming home earlier, canceled late meetings, skipped happy hour invites. I told my coworkers I was just trying to spend more time with my son, which wasn't a lie. But I didn't tell them that every evening felt like surveillance, that I'd started writing things down in a little notebook I kept hidden in the garage. Times, dates, patterns, words. Most of what I found was subtle, surgical, almost. Like how she would only offer Daniel the burnt pancakes and take the perfect ones for herself. Or how she corrected his grammar with this razor-thin smile, like she was embarrassed to hear his voice in front of company. Or how she told him he was too loud even when he was just laughing at a cartoon. But it wasn't just what she did, it was what she didn't do. No bedtime stories, no praise, no hugs, no real interaction unless it was to criticize or ignore. You can neglect someone with kindness on your face, and that's what chilled me the most. Daniel became more and more withdrawn. I started seeing shadows under his eyes. He'd stare out the car window in silence on the way to school. One night, I heard him muttering something in his sleep. I leaned closer and caught a single phrase, soft and heartbreaking. I'm trying to be better. Better? What kind of mother makes a 9-year-old think he has to be better just to be loved? That was when the guilt hit, like a landslide, because I had missed it. I had let it happen under my own roof. While I was busy chasing promotions and believing in the facade of a happy home, my son was quietly fading into himself. I started looking back further, years, trying to trace the beginning of this. That's when I remembered something I hadn't thought of in ages. When Daniel was about 4, we had this afternoon in the park. It was just me and him. Laura had stayed home, said she was too tired. We raced toy cars in the grass, ate ice cream, got dirt all over our clothes. On the way home, Daniel fell asleep in his car seat, one hand still gripping the little red car he refused to let go of. When I carried him inside, Laura didn't smile. She looked at his dirty shoes, at the smudge on his cheek, and she sighed. He's too much sometimes, she said. Too much. At the time, I thought she was just overwhelmed. Parenting is exhausting, I know that. But now I wondered if that was the moment something shifted inside her. Or maybe it was always there, and I just didn't want to see it. I started digging deeper, quietly, carefully. I looked through her old journals when she wasn't home. Scrolled back through years of social media posts. Read between the lines. And the more I searched, the more a picture started to form, not of a woman who was struggling, but of a woman who felt like motherhood had been forced on her. Old posts before Daniel was born, about how she wanted to move to New York, how she hated small-town life, how she felt trapped in the suburbs, how she couldn't wait to be free again. And then, the entries stopped, right around the time Daniel turned 2. Just silence. I think that's when the resentment began. But resentment alone doesn't turn into cruelty. It takes something darker than that. And one night, I found it. A memory, buried so deep I hadn't thought about it in years. It wasn't even mine, it was hers. We had just started dating. One night, over cheap wine and laughter, Laura told me a story about her childhood. About how her mother used to ignore her when she cried. How she learned not to make noise. How she once stood in the hallway with a fever for hours because she was afraid to bother her mom during one of her bad moods. She had said it casually, even laughed at it like it was just a weird family quirk. I hadn't thought about it since. But now I saw it for what it really was: history. Repeating itself. A cycle, quietly passed from mother to daughter. And now from mother to son. And I knew right then that something had to be done, but not with shouting, not with confrontation, with precision, with patience, because I had to understand all of it before I made a move. So I waited. I watched. And then, one evening, I saw her take something from Daniel's backpack, a folded piece of paper. She didn't show it to him. Didn't ask him about it. She just opened it slowly, read it, and smiled. Not warmly. But with something cold. Knowing. That was the moment everything changed. I waited until she went to bed before I checked his backpack. It wasn't there. The drawing, or letter, or whatever it was, she had taken it and hidden it somewhere. I searched the kitchen drawers, the office, her purse. Nothing. I didn't want to wake Daniel by snooping around his room, but the image of that smile, that knowing, satisfied smirk, kept playing in my head like a loop I couldn't shut off. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She served coffee, kissed my cheek, told Daniel to brush his teeth with a tone that sounded almost motherly, but her eyes kept drifting toward his backpack again, like she was waiting to see if he'd notice. He did. He opened it slowly, brows furrowed. Then he paused. I watched his face, confusion, then a flash of disappointment. He looked around the kitchen, at her, at me, then quietly zipped it shut. That was the moment I made my choice. No more waiting. I took the day off work and drove straight to a friend of mine, Keith, a high school buddy who'd gone into private security. He owed me a favor. I told him I needed a discreet camera. No questions asked. That night I installed it in the hallway facing Daniel's room. A second one in the living room. Both hidden, both motion triggered. I didn't want to believe I'd catch anything horrible, but I had to know. The footage from the first 2 days showed almost nothing. Routine movements. Larva passing by. Daniel watching cartoons alone. The usual. Until Friday night. Daniel had gone to bed early. I was working in the garage. Larva was in the kitchen. At some point, she walked down the hall, paused outside his door. She opened it and stepped inside. 10 minutes. 10 long, silent minutes. Then she emerged, holding a notebook in her hands. My heart sank. I waited until she fell asleep. Then I slipped out of bed and checked her closet, rummaging through a shoebox, where she kept her old journals and receipts. There it was, Daniel's notebook. I opened it, hands trembling. It wasn't schoolwork. It wasn't drawings. It was a journal. His journal. Page after page of messy, crooked handwriting, raw, unfiltered thoughts. Some of it childlike, some of it painfully grown. I think Mommy hates me. She doesn't like when I talk. She says I make things worse. I wish I could be different. Maybe then she'd smile at me. Each sentence felt like a stab. But then I got to the last entry. That's when the shaking started. I saw her crying in the bathroom. I wanted to hug her, but I didn't. I think I make her sad just by being alive. I had to sit down. I don't remember how long I stayed there, holding that little spiral notebook in my lap like it was made of glass. I felt this mix of rage, heartbreak, and something even worse, shame, because he was blaming himself. And all this time, I was doing nothing but watching. The next morning, I played the hallway footage again. When she entered his room that night, she didn't yell, didn't touch him. She just stood over his bed and took the journal from beneath his pillow while he pretended to be asleep. Then she turned, paused at the doorway, and whispered something. I turned the volume up, leaned closer, listened to the static. Finally, I heard it. You shouldn't write things that make me look like a bad mom. And then she walked away. That was it. Not anger, not remorse, just manipulation, calculated, cold, quiet control over a child who still called her mommy. I couldn't confront her the next day. I couldn't scream. Not yet. I needed her to show herself. Not just to me, to someone else. I scheduled a therapy session. One for Daniel, told her I thought he was struggling with school, emotions, normal boy stuff. She agreed without resistance, too focused on keeping up appearances. But when we sat in that therapist's office, and Daniel was alone with the woman for 15 minutes, something happened I'll never forget. The therapist walked out, eyes wide. She looked at me, then at Laura. And calmly said, "I'd like to show you something your son drew." She turned the paper around, and that's when I saw it. A child's sketch, crude, but painfully clear. A small boy standing in the corner of a room. A woman towering over him, her face scribbled out in black crayon. A speech bubble that read, "You ruin everything." But what shook me the most was the boy's shirt. It said, "Sorry." Laura froze. Her face went white. She stared at the picture for a long time, jaw clenched. And then, for the first time in years, she began to cry, not soft, graceful tears. She broke. I had never seen Laura cry like that. Not at her father's funeral, not during our worst fights. Not even the day Daniel was born, when her eyes were dry and focused, holding our son like she was trying to memorize a duty, not a dream. But in that therapist's office, faced with a child's drawing and no way to explain it away, she crumbled. It wasn't the kind of breakdown that earns sympathy. It was messy, ugly, exposing. She grabbed the paper from the therapist's hands like it had cut her, staring at it like she didn't recognize herself. Her lips trembled, but no words came. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, a silent loop of shock and guilt. And that's when the therapist, Dr. Reynolds, looked at me. Not her, me. She said quietly, "Do you want to step outside with me for a moment?" I did. As we walked down the hallway, I could still hear Laura in the room behind us, now whispering to herself, crying, panicked, but I wasn't ready to feel sorry. I wasn't ready to comfort the woman who had turned my son's love into fear. Dr. Reynolds led me to a small office and closed the door. Then she turned to me, calm and firm. "I'm not just concerned about emotional neglect," she said. "There are patterns here that suggest coercive control, guilt-based parenting, possibly generational trauma. Your son feels responsible for her emotions, and that's deeply unhealthy for a child his age." My throat tightened. I nodded. "I know. I've been watching. I needed someone else to see it too." She sat down, motioned for me to do the same. He's a deeply empathetic boy. I don't know what she's been through, not yet, but whatever it is, she's projecting it onto him. He's absorbing pain that isn't his. I swallowed hard. "What happens now?" She looked me in the eye. "That depends on you." That night, back home, Laura barely spoke a word. She sat at the kitchen table long after dinner, staring into her tea like it might forgive her. I was with Daniel, helping him brush his teeth, reading him a bedtime story, the first time he actually asked for one in weeks. After he fell asleep, I came back downstairs, and she was still there. She didn't look up when I entered. Just said, "I didn't know he felt that way." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You didn't want to know." She flinched. "I saw the notebook," I continued. "I saw the footage. I heard what you said to him." She looked up sharply. "You were spying on me?" I stepped forward, voice low. "I was protecting our son." Tears welled again. "But I didn't stop. You made him feel like love was something he had to earn, that he had to be perfect just to be noticed." Her voice cracked. "I didn't mean to, but you did," I said calmly, not with fists, not with screaming, but with silence, with your absence, even when you were in the same room. She looked down. Her hands shook. She whispered, "My mother. She used to say I ruined everything. I didn't want to be like her. I thought if I kept control, if I made things perfect, I'd never become her." I let the silence sit between us. "You didn't become her," I said, finally. You became someone your son is afraid to wake up in the morning. She broke down again, and I let her, because I wasn't there to fix her. I was there to make. Sure, she saw what she'd done, and when she finally looked up at me, mascara streaked and eyes wide with a kind of terrified clarity, she whispered, "What do I do?" I said, "You start by apologizing." Not to me, to him. The next morning, the house was still. No birdsong. No cereal crunching. Just this breathless pause, like the world was waiting to see what would happen next. Lavra knocked gently on Daniel's door before opening it. She stepped inside while I waited in the hallway, close enough to hear, far enough to let it be between them. "Hey," she said softly. Silence. I need to tell you something." I pressed my back to the wall, closed my eyes, listened. "I read your notebook," she said. Her voice was breaking. "I shouldn't have taken it. That was wrong. And what I saw in it," her voice caught. "You think I don't love you, that I don't want you, that you're the reason I'm sad." Another pause. "I did that to you. I made you feel that way, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Daniel." Still nothing. Then a sniff, a soft sound, like a fragile dam beginning to crack. She continued, "I've been carrying a lot of things for a long time. Anger I never dealt with, pain I thought I had buried, and I let it spill onto you when all you ever did was love me." Then came the words that I think changed everything. "It's not your job to fix me. You're the child. I'm the mother. And I failed you. But I want to do better. I will do better. If you'll let me." Another pause. Then Daniel's voice, small and unsure. "You mean it?" I heard the sound of the bed creaking. Then, her voice, closer to him now. "Yes, I mean it." He didn't say anything after that. But I didn't need to hear more. I walked downstairs and let them have that moment. Over the next few weeks, we began the slow work of rebuilding. Family therapy. Honest conversations. Letters exchanged between them with words they couldn't say out loud. There were setbacks, days where she'd shut down, where he'd retreat, where I'd question whether any of it would really last. But little by little, something began to shift. I saw her start to show up. Not just physically, but emotionally. She learned how to listen, how to hug without flinching, how to ask him how he felt and actually wait for the answer. And Daniel, he started smiling again, not the forced smile, the real one. He'd come home with drawings, with questions, with laughter. One night, he fell asleep on the couch with his head on her lap, and she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. The good kind this time, but I didn't let myself forget. Because healing isn't forgetting. It's remembering without breaking. It's choosing to keep your eyes open. One evening, after dinner, Daniel looked at me and said, "Daddy?" "Yeah." "Buddy, can we go to the park again? Like we used to?" I smiled. "Of course." And we did. We raced cars in the grass, ate ice cream, got dirt on our jeans. And when I looked back at the bench, I saw Laura sitting there, watching us, a soft smile on her face. Not one for the world, not one for Facebook. Just one for us. And I realized then, peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from truth. And truth, no matter how painful, will always be the beginning of love. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel. It really helps. Click the video on the screen, and I'll see you there.